What's up guys, welcome back to the BFS Fishing channel, and in this video we're going to be doing a follow-up on these two Xiao Ju reels. Now on the left hand side I've got the Xiao Ju gold version, which is going to be the alloy version, and then on the right hand side I've got the Xiao Ju youth or silver version. This is going to be the carbon frame version of this reel. Now in my testing of these two reels, I've kind of found that they just don't quite live up to their specs. And I'm going to go over all of the little quirks that I've found with these two reels. But, and it's a big but, there is a caveat. The caveat is that these two reels actually do cast fairly well. If I had to choose between the two reels, which I would choose to cast, something like a trout magnet, I would actually go with the cheaper youth version, and that's simply because it's a shaftless spool design, and it has a thinner, narrower spool, and the spool diameter is actually smaller, and also the spool weight is much lower than the gold version. Between the two reels, the gold version actually does feel like it's a lot more refined. And then we're just going to go ahead and get into kind of all of the downsides to these reels, and then I'll talk about the pros as well. So we'll talk about the gold one first, because that is the more expensive version, and it's actually the nicer feeling of the two. So ShengHe's got a lot of stuff right, but they do have a lot of stuff that they need to work on as well. And one of the big things that I swapped out right away was the handle. I think that their material, the cork material that they've used, is actually not something that I would have chosen. It's just going to get dirty and degrade over time. It does feel very nice in the hand. It's, it's really soft because it's cork, but just won't last nearly as long as something like, say, a TPU handle. The other thing is that they didn't really shim these very well, and I don't know if you can see that it's got a bit of wiggle, but it's both sides, and actually this one is a little bit worse. They are using ball bearings on the inside, and the ball bearings, I believe they're actually a ceramic. I did take a look at the inside. The actual handle portion itself is fine. The carbon fiber they used looks great. It's not that shiny, kind of glossy look. I actually quite like this matte finish, but it's these handle knobs that kind of just don't do it for me. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that the drag clicker sound is actually quite low on this reel. And I don't know if this is just my personal copy, but let's compare this. Compared to, so it's almost like this one, the youth edition, is really, really loud, that's fine. But the gold edition is very muted. So I didn't really like that about it. And then the drag clicker, the clicks, like the degrees that you have to turn your drag star before it actually clicks, it's a lot more than, say, something like, right? So there's less resolution with the clicks in the drag clicker. They also feel, it also feels a lot harder to turn than most reels. And I've actually already gone ahead and removed one of the spring washers that's in there underneath this star drag. So I think they need to tune this a little bit better. The next thing is that the line guide on this is actually, I don't know what's going on with this one, but it's purely an elliptical shape on both sides. So this is the exit. I don't know if you guys can actually see that, but on this side of the reel too, and hopefully I can move it to the point where you guys can actually see, the shape is the same. It's not a conical design. It's just a elliptical shape all the way through from the back of the line guide to the front of the line guide. So they're not really doing you any favors with, line guide management. And I'm not really sure why they decided to do that, because especially on the Youth Edition, you can just see how much of a conical shape this is. It's like a huge triangle that goes down to one tiny point in the front. So that's another thing that is kind of a con for this reel. Then the spool diameter being ever so slightly larger than the Youth Edition, and then the fact that this one has a spool shaft. So I'm not really sure why they included a spool shaft on this version when they went with a shaftless spool design on the Youth Edition or the Silver Edition. So those are the things that, in my opinion, they can work on with this reel. It will cast down to 1 gram. It will cast a little bit lower than that too, but you're gonna have to tweak your reel. And what I mean by that is you're gonna have to introduce some spool tension and then lower your brakes in order to actually get it to get your sub 1 gram lure to cast. Now you're not gonna get very good distance with it, but you know, it will cast down to that weight. So those are kind of my gripes about the reel. The reel does get a lot of things correct. The ergonomics of the reel are very nice. The finish of the reel is very nice. The fact that you're getting an alloy frame for about $80 is really nice. The retrieve is very smooth. There's not a lot of handle slop, which is great compared to the other reel. And, you know, just from those gripes that I have, everything else is pretty much done very well. So spool tension knob is done very well. You know, the clutch button, you have a really good tactile positive feel. And then when you want to re-engage your clutch, it does so with not too much effort, but just enough where it's not just going to trip and close up on anything. I do kind of like that they introduced this pull down spring loaded tab on the side plate, which is something that I haven't seen too often. Brakes are done right. There is one more thing though that I just forgot and just reminded myself of. So this reel is supposed to come with orange seal ceramic bearings, and I went ahead and I de-shielded these. And if you look on the spool shaft, you'll notice that these ones have the kind of micro ball bearings that are ceramic. So that's great. But on this side, on the side plate, you'll notice that the ball bearings, or the balls, are actually quite large compared to this bearing. So I'm not sure if this is, I don't know why they went with two different styles of ball bearings, but that's very odd. So my advice would be is if you're gonna buy this reel, at some point, I would recommend that you maybe consider swapping out these two ball bearings to something that is a higher quality, kind of like a Roro BFS ST bearing, and then consider swapping out your reel handle for something a little bit different, because these knobs are going to deteriorate over time. They're going to get really dirty, and then I don't know if you might be lucky and not get a handle knob that has a lot of slop in it. So that's the gold alloy version. And what would I recommend for it? Yeah, for $80, if you're looking for something that's a metal frame and can handle a lot of abuse, I think this reel might actually fit the bill. But like I said, I would consider doing some maintenance on it and potentially some upgrades on it as well, because it has some downsides to it. So it's not 100% perfect. So they do have some things to work on. Okay, now getting on to the youth version. So here's the thing. This reel will actually cast under 1 gram, and it does it quite well. And it also casts 1 gram quite far. And for a 6+1 ball bearing reel, the handle rotates very freely, which is really nice. But when I initially started using the reel, the main gear felt a little geary, to say the least. Like it felt like there was some, I don't know, manufacturing debris left over in the main gear, which just didn't make the rotation of the handle feel very good. I also went ahead and de-shielded the bearings on this one, but I'm going to go ahead and go over all of the cons that I have for this reel. So the first one was that the main gear could potentially use a little bit of better machining, because after I've used it a little bit, the rotation feels a lot smoother now. The next point is that I feel like the handle is not supported super well, and I did make a teardown video of this reel, which I will release at some point in the future, but the anti-reverse clutch bearing that resides in this side plate actually just fell out. Like it's supposed to be press fit or friction fit into this side plate, but it just fell out. And so I'm wondering if it's that in conjunction with maybe some poor tolerances with the handle bearing that are kind of allowing this handle to kind of have a little bit of slop, and then that kind of feels like you can hear that. And it's not just the handle knob slop, it's the actual handle itself has a little bit of back and forth play. So that's one of my main gripes. The next one has to do with this nose line guide, and it's the fact that it's so big and it's pushed so far forward that even though this little cover is a great resting place for your finger, there are times when your finger will run into it. And I'm not really sure why they have it. You can also see how it goes so far over that it protrudes on this side. I mean, in this Xiao Ju, everything is kind of kept underneath this cover plate, and your finger never has a chance to touch the line guide. So not really sure what the design choice was for that, but I think that's a little bit of a gripe for me. The next thing is kind of a big deal, because this brake dial, when you go to kind of make your adjustments, there's a little bit of slop there. And if you'll notice, I don't know if you guys can see, but when you go back and forth, there's a little bit of play where nothing really is engaging, and it makes it so that when you're making little tiny micro adjustments to your brake, you might land in between a click and it will just not register. And so it makes kind of fine-tuning the brakes on this reel a little bit difficult. You can still get away with it, and you can still, you know, adjust your spool tension if you need to, kind of make to compensate for, you know, a half register, I guess. But yeah, I wish they had done a better job with that, because if you look at the gold version, you get some really positive clicks in this brake dial, which is really nice. But for some reason on this one, they're just not nearly as good. It's hard to probably translate over, you know, video to show you guys what that's all about. But trust me when I say that this brake dial is not really just doesn't feel very precise to me. Okay, so that's the next thing. And then there are two more, and one of them is to do with the clutch button. It just feels like sometimes, at random times too, the clutch button takes a lot more force to disengage. And then when you want to re-engage, it takes quite a bit of effort to overcome those springs. So not really sure what that's about. I did go ahead and open it up, and you know, everything looked fine to me. So maybe it has to do with the spring strength that they've got in the clutch mechanism. But that's something that may kind of break in over time and kind of, you know, wear down as the springs get worked in over time. But anyways, between these two reels, actually, if I were to choose one, I would go with the cheaper version, mainly because it's $60. It can cast under 1 gram right out of the box. It could use a little bit of work, but you don't absolutely have to put in the work to get it to cast. Can it benefit from a nice handle? Yes, for sure, because these are bushings in the handle knobs, and you know, even though these are TPU coated, the design and feel of them is not the best in my opinion. But you know, other than that, and aside from the brake dial, if you can kind of get used to that and learn how it works and how it registers, then I think this reel is a pretty good bang for your buck. It's got good value because you can cast down to that. That being said, if you can find a Dark Wolf Ultra or a Soul King Acura for about the same price as this reel, Now, I would kind of push you over to, going to those reels, because those reels are a tried and true. They're very, very smooth, and they work great. So did ShengHe get a home run with these two reels? Not so much a home run. I think they are good contenders and good entries in the budget BFS world. But unfortunately, I can't give these guys a very, very high recommendation. But they are good reels. And if you want a cheap alloy reel, then $80, you can't really go bad, and you can't go wrong with that. And if you need to have a reel that casts down to under 1 gram, then the Youth Edition might be the reel for you. So with that being said, I think that's going to do it for this video. It's not really the video that I wanted to make about these two reels. I had really, really high hopes for these, that they would kind of have a home run and knock it out of the park, because the specs were just so great. But I'm finding that with these reels that are kind of trying to come under a really low budget, that it's pretty hit or miss. But yeah, if you guys have comments or questions about these two reels, please go ahead and leave it in the comment section down below. If you liked the video, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, go ahead and leave a thumbs down, and maybe tell me why you didn't like the video. It really helps me improve the quality of these videos for you guys. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.